So good afternoon or good morning. I'm Chuck Bardron, and this webinar is going to be talking about EDDMaps and the new EDDMaps Pro smartphone app that's available for iPhone and Android. I'm going to get things started with a little bit of an introduction to EDDMaps, just in case we've got folks that aren't as familiar with it, and then we're going to jump right into the app and to kind of the website side of the app, what needs to be done. There is a question box that you should have, and if you have any questions, you can type those in there, and I'll either answer them as we go, or at the end, or as appropriate. And then, if you have a specific question, we can also turn on the audio for you individually as we go along, so you can ask questions that way. So to get started, I'm Chuck Bardron. I'm with the University of Georgia Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health. And we have developed this mapping platform called EDDMaps, many of which you in Montana are starting to use to document work on different projects. And so my hope today is to kind of give you some background about EDDMaps and how to get started using the EDDMaps Pro smartphone app. So EDDMaps was created starting back in 2005. Our group, Bugwood at the University of Georgia, had a long history of collecting slides, pulling those slides into different products such as photo CDs, or ultimately the Forestry Images website. And since 2001, we've collected over 250,000 pictures that are available through what we call the Bugwood Image Database System. And a lot of that was focused initially on forest health. Well, in the Southeast, forest health started becoming invasive plants as a big issue. So we started pulling together information on invasive plants, which led to a couple of different products focused on invasive plants. First, invasive plants of Eastern United States, and then invasive plants of the U.S. CD-ROM and DVD project. That turned into looking and saying, okay, well, there's really a need for maps. There's not a good location where you can go and get an overview of where these plants are found, both at a very local level as well as at the national level. So we looked around, and there were a lot of different maps, and there were a lot of different tools out there that were starting to be ways to collect data and pull that data together, aggregate that data. We looked at the Invasive Plant Atlas of New England, a project that started out at University of Connecticut by Les Merhoff, and there was a good citizen science project as well as pulling together existing data on a focused area. We also looked at the North American Invasive Plant Mapping Standards that were done by the North American Weed Management Association, which is now the North American Invasive Species Management Association, NASMA. And we said, okay, let's build a base system using these standards. And then around this same time, the Google Maps API came out, and it was a way to very easily overlay data onto a map that was easy for the user to navigate. And so we said, let's pull these tools together and figure out exactly what we need. Well, there was really two things that were needed. One was this common operating platform for sharing data, and the other was an easy way to do electronic reporting. And so EDDMaps was launched in 2005, focused on this, and it quickly expanded into to different regional projects, one of which is the EDDMaps West project, which hopefully most of you are familiar with. And that tool really got us to where we are today. EDDMaps has been a project that has worked because there's been a lot of different partners, both external as well as some resources put in by the University of Georgia to develop this. And more recently, with the EDDMaps Pro project that we're going to be talking about more today, the EDDMaps Pro project happened as a as a joint project of the Utah Weed Supervisors Association and Montana Department of Agriculture. So they both saw this need for the project we're going to talk about today, and they both put funding in to make it happen. So I mentioned EDDMaps West is kind of both the smartphone app and the website. It's kind of the portal for the Western United States to get into EDDMaps, and it's been one of the more successful projects that we've launched through the EDDMaps system. We've done a lot of analysis on the data recently, and I wanted to touch on this briefly on who kind of the typical users are. Well, EDDMaps has over 3 million records, and those records, a lot of which come from bulk data sets that are pulled in, whether it be agency data or other databases that we share data with. But when you really get down to the data coming in from smartphones or website by individuals, there's about 152,000 records. And what we've looked at is that most of those are users who are only reporting just a handful of things, not where we've seen with other systems that there's thousands of records from just a handful of users. We mentioned the EDDMaps West app, and it's part of a suite of applications that are available, different regional applications. And these applications were built to focus on that area of the country. So even though the EDDMaps West is a very large download as it stands, it's a lot smaller than it would be if it had that comprehensive field guide of all species across the entire U.S. or across North America. When you go to the EDDMaps website, there's a reporting form. Here's an example of one where you can go in, choose the species, and fill out all the information right there on the website. And that's one way to get data in. And then the other is as we've mentioned, through the smartphone app and now through the new EDDMaps Pro app. We also have a bulk uploader where you can take a shapefile or take your existing database and share that with us. So take that database and upload it to the website, and then we make that available through the EDDMaps system. And the output is different maps. And here's an example of a map of kudzu, just showing the different sources of the data, whether it's from literature or from individual observations or both. And then when you really zoom down into the data, you can see the point data on the map. And then as you click on a record, if there's a polygon available, you can zoom in and actually see that polygon to go along with the point record. And when you start talking about the scope of the data covers most of the United States. This is a map we put together showing kind of the density of the data. What counties, obviously bigger counties usually have more data, but where the data kind of sits across the U.S. And then this shows the different regions that EDDMaps is broken up into, and the blue represents the EDDMaps West project. And then some of the brown colors represent where there's an existing state database that then the data is shared with EDDMaps. So EDDMaps now has over 3 million records. About 2 million of those have points associated with them versus just county level data. That's covering 5,000 species from 15,000 different sources. And there's over 40,000 users that are signed up as users on the site, but not all of those have submitted data. Most of the data is focused on plants, but we are starting to do some ag diseases, ag insects and diseases, as well as biocontrol agents. In 2017, EDDMaps was averaging 105 reports a day from either smartphone or from websites, and the most in one day was almost 1,000 records back in April. And what we've really seen over the years is this shift from website reports into smartphone reports. And so over the last few years, and really in 16 and 17, we're really seeing that jump where there's a lot of reports coming in from smartphones. And that's where we've really focused our development on, is improving those tools and improving the tools for users that have a lot of reports. When you start looking at it at the state level, some of that previous map was a little, the numbers were a little off because in 2016 and 2017, there were these crews that went out and collected massive amounts of data for the state of Minnesota. And so when you look at that, they all were using iPads, and that's part of why the big jump in 2016 and 2017. But as you can see, Montana is one of the higher states that have been contributing to EDDMaps, and as what we've seen is as more outreach is being done and more education is being done, then that is when we really start seeing more data coming in from an area. Just as an interesting tidbit, when we started looking at in Florida, where there's a lot of animal reporting going on, and we started comparing plant reporting to animal reporting, we saw an interesting thing. Overall, animals were only about 18%. But when you go to smartphones, and my graphic isn't showing up for some reason, but that number jumped to about 40% animal reports. So EDDMaps Pro is what we're really here for, and I'm going to get into the details of that in just a second. But an overview of EDDMaps Pro, the concept behind it was most people work in a county. That's where their work is taking place, or in a couple of different counties. And so we said, okay, let's take the county example. Let's choose a county on the map. Let's download all the data for that county onto a device. And then when you're out in the field, you can see all the existing data for that county. You can pull in the base maps from Google, so you can see the maps so you can see where you are on the map when you're out in the field and may not have cellular coverage. And then you can start filling in the points from there. And so that's kind of the thought. You can go in, you can drop a new point on the map, you can fill out the form and say what that point is, provide information about that point. And then you can also do a revisit. And the revisit is a very powerful tool that was previously not available in a smartphone app until EDDMaps Pro was released. And then at the end of the day, you sync back to the server, provide that information back to the server, and then you can download it again and get a fresh view of that. So the work that you did today would be available in that download that you pull in tomorrow. And what we're really trying to do with this, other than just make it easier for you to collect the information for the area you're working in, we've also trying to change the story that the map tells. So if you're going out and you're doing treatments, if you're eradicating spots, being able to change the map from just solid red to a map that really shows the differences between, hey, we're actually doing a lot of work in this area and we're treating it, and we're changing the kind of the story that the map tells. So, in talking about EDDMaps compared to some other solutions for mapping, EDDMaps' real power is these smartphone apps, including EDDMaps Pro, and those are being used and downloaded by folks. We've also got a very robust verification system. So when you go on and you report something, that report, no matter how it comes in, is sent to a verifier for them to review. And in most cases, that's at the state level or at the county level within your state or county. And they have a checkoff before that data is made public on the web. And then once it's made public, then it's made available in these maps, in user alerts that can be sent out when new reports come in, and also in data feeds to other systems. I mentioned earlier, where the real success comes in, and the real success comes in by the outreach, by talking to people and telling them, hey, if you see something, report it using EDDMaps. It'll go into this system, and then hopefully some work can be done on that spot. We look to some of our partners in Canada who have really done a good job with social media and doing Map It Monday and going on the Pokemon Go rage from a few summers ago where, hey, if you're out playing Pokemon Go, don't forget about reporting invasive species as well. In Florida, they've taken the route of doing billboards and bumper stickers to push the EDDMaps, which is called I've Got One, is the app in Florida, and really push people in the general public to also report things. And this was a good example with the anaconda that was found in Florida. A short press release talking about this anaconda being found. But what I thought was really interesting is at the bottom of that, this is why reporting invasive species is important. And if you see something, report it using this hotline that they've got set up, or using the I've Got One app or the I'veGotOne.org. And I think following this model in other places is a really good way of, hey, you're doing work on this, but this is why we're doing the work on it. And if you see a weed that looks like something new, report it, make that data available, and then it doesn't get lost by just the knowledge in somebody's head. And as you do that, you can start pulling together this information and really build some powerful tools. Kudzu bug was an example in the Southeast where we really knew the distribution from when it first was found and as it spread across the Southeast. So you're not always going to get maps that really show the distribution like this, but this is just an example of when you're really tracking something, what a tool like EDDMaps can do for you. And then that map can be embedded and shared on a county website, on a state website, to show the work that's being done. I mentioned EDDMaps pulling data from a lot of existing systems. We're continuing to do that. We're working on a set from the National Forest System that's going to be available soon through EDDMaps, as well as data from BLM. Their data set is going to be available in EDDMaps very soon. We've been working with our Naturalist system. That was a system that, is kind of out there to report anything, and we're working on harvesting that data on invasive species from them. So, it's about 200,000 records nationally. And so when something gets reported through that system, it doesn't get lost. There was recently a workshop that the Western Governors Association held. And out of that workshop are some really good recommendations that will be circulated very soon. But the gist was that EDDMaps, as well as the USGS Non-Indigenous Aquatic Species Database, the USGS Bison Database, and IMAP Invasives, all came to the agreement that we're going to continue to share data and really work where it doesn't matter where something is reported. It's made available through all these systems. And if you've been following mapping at a national level over the years, I think this is going to be a very good step in the right direction. We see EDDMaps having a tool for every job, and that's one of which we're going to talk about with the EDDMaps Pro. And then that infrastructure that exists up in the Amazon Web Services cloud, where all the data is instantly available, and you're not dealing with any network lag or server issues. So as we move forward, EDDMaps is going to continue to expand. We're going to enhance some of the use of the ArcGIS tools and have some better searching tools, and ultimately build toward this complete county distribution across the U.S. and getting different groups to really implement EDDMaps as their state database. And that's really what we're hoping and shooting for in a lot of areas where, there's no reason to recreate something else, but you can use EDDMaps at the local level. And also really use it as an education tool. So, it's a way that all your data can be shared in one place, but then it also is that early detection tool that can help others get involved and understand the issue. So with that, some recommendations we've put together, as we've built this, and this is coming out in a early detection document that we've worked with the National Invasive Species Council on developing, but really looking at the different levels and saying, what should be reported, how is it reported, then who has jurisdiction when something is reported, doing the automatic, is it new to the county, is it new to the state, is it new to the U.S., Is the identification correct? Does the sample need to be sent to a herbarium to verify that the identification is correct? And then what work was done on it, and was that work that was done effective, and what was the follow up to that? So that's kind of my introduction. And there's my email address. That if you have any additional questions on kind of the basics of EDDMaps, feel free to reach out to me. And now what I'm going to do is jump over to the EDDMaps website, get it where y'all can see it. So one of the things from a very simple level that you need to do when you get started is make sure that you have an account with EDDMaps. And so there's a registration form where you can go in, fill out the information, create an account, create the login, create the password, and kind of get yourself set up within EDDMaps. That's going to be the first thing you're going to need when you move over to the EDDMaps Pro app. And so I'm going to have done that, and I log in. And what we've done, and this is available through the main EDDMaps website, or if you're on EDDMaps West, is through the My EDDMaps part of the EDDMaps website, we've created these two new options over here. One is My Species List, and one is My County List. And so if you go to the My Species List, and you can see I've currently got a long list of species here, but I'm going to go ahead and clear that. And you can go in on an individual basis and say, okay, I want to add Medusa head to my list. And so you can choose Medusa head and do add species. And then Medusa head gets added to your list. And so when we go into the EDDMaps Pro app, then the options that we're going to have to report on that are going to be what you've set up on your list. And so this is a way, so the species that are part of the EDDMaps Pro app are only species that you're interested in. So that can be you setting them up one at a time through this interface, or the other option that we've built in is where you can go on and choose the Montana Noxious Weed List and just do add list. And when you do that, this page is going to refresh, and it's going to have a list of all the weeds on the Montana Noxious Weed List. So a very quick way to pull in the species that are important at the state level that you can put in, and if there are additional species that you would want to add, you can add those. You can add those on an individual basis. So I'm going to use Polygon grass because that's my southeast perspective, and I want to add it, and then it's included on the list. And in a few minutes, when we go to the app, then you'll see that will be your options of what species you can report on the app. Switching over, the second option, My County List. This is another thing that there's a good thing for you to set up prior to using the smartphone app. So you can go on and say, okay, well, I'm interested in Montana, and I want to pull in, let's do Lewis and Clark County. We'll use that one as an example for now. And then Missoula County, we're going to add it as well. And I've got some other examples I'm going to keep on here for now, and I'll show you how that works when we switch over to the app. So that's the My Species and the My County. When you get started with EDDMaps Pro, I would suggest get your account set up on the website. Once you've got that account set up, then go in and choose what species you're going to be reporting, and that will shorten that species list for you, and then what counties you're interested in as well. And so you can populate those counties, and you'll see how that works on the app in a second. Before I switch over to the app, does anybody have any questions kind of focused on the website? if you want to enter those into the question part of EDDMaps, question part of the GoToWebinar software, then I'll be glad to answer those before we switch over, or we can come back to them at the end. While I'm kind of giving you all a few minutes to do that, one thing I will mention is the alert system. The alert system, you can go in and say, okay, well, I want to know in Montana about all plants that are reported. And so you can create that alert down here. It will add it to your list of alerts. And when you and how this works is when a report comes into EDDMaps and it has been verified, then an alert will be sent to you. And those alerts come out once a day, so you'll never get more than one email in a day. And it'll be a summary of whatever action took place in the previous 24 hours. And so at 8 o'clock Eastern time every morning, this runs, and then it kind of summarizes what all your different alerts have been set up for. And you can set those up at the county level, so you just see things reported in a county. You can set them up just for aquatic plants. You can set them up for individual species. And you also can set them up for just when something is new. So only give you a report when, hey, it's the first time that something has been found in that county or in that area. So that's the alert system. It's different from the verifier system. So the verifiers receive emails instantly when something is reported. As soon as the report goes in, they get an email alerting them about that new report and giving them the option to verify that report. This is from the user level of an alert, so you can kind of see what's coming in or what's coming in. If you're the county weed coordinator in one county and you want to know about reports that are coming in from your surrounding county, this is the way to set up and do that. And then as those reports are verified, you get the alert letting you know about that. I mentioned earlier the upload. This is the upload view that you'll see. You won't see this admin view, but you'll see this upload view. So if you have existing data in a shape file, in a spreadsheet, in some other format, then you can go here and do an upload of that data. You can name that batch something that will help you recognize it. And then Rebecca Wallace gets alerted on that, and then she is able to view all the different sets that have come in and keep track of those within the admin part, so she can keep up with what the status of those uploads have been. And we've also got some templates for Excel and some instructions to go along with the bulk upload part. So that, there's also statistics that are kind of on this main EDDMaps page, and you can also manage your reports and your information all from this page. So with no questions, I'm gonna switch over to the smartphone app. So this is, I will go back a screen. So this is the EDDMaps Pro app down here at the bottom. When you click on that, it opens up into a map view. And I think that's an important thing, that really the focus of the EDDMaps Pro app is, this map view. And so if you can see it, you can see the data that's been reported around where my office is, and a lot of test data that's kind of gone in this area. But you can see those points and zoom in at different levels to get as close as you need to do that. When you click on a point, you can see more information about that point with a quick pop-up. You also can, from this view, very quickly add a point. And when you click on that plus here, you have you have 4 different options. You can just drop a point at your current location. You can draw a polygon. You can drop a marker on the map that then you can move around. Or if you're in a hurry and it's maybe an animal that you're trying to get for some reason and you want to go straight to taking a photo, then you can click on the take a photo option and it will jump straight to the camera. So let's start off by dropping that marker. You can take that marker and drag it and move it. So let's say this right here is what we're trying to report. And then hit okay, well, I'm done with that. And I go to the report form. And so the first thing on the report form is what the species is. And when you click on that, it's going to give you that list of species that we put in as the state species list. So that's coming directly from your list that you set up on the My EDDMaps page. So we're going to go ahead and say that we're going to use Bermuda grass as the example. You have the option to take a picture here. Again, you've got your location. And then the typical thing you see on the EDDMaps West form, you've got how long you spent, and let's just say 5 minutes. The density of that, and let's say that it was let's just go ahead and say 1 acre. And then any notes to go along with that. Not test day, but test data. And then you save that, and that report gets saved to your queue, and then it takes you back to the screen, and that recent point that you just added is now added to the screen. So you don't lose, and it's in a different color. So you're able to see what work you've done that day as you're doing it. And if we go to the upload queue, then there's that record that we have there. And I'm going to switch over to the data sets. This is the other part that I've pulled in a few data sets. As you can see, the Tift County data set, and that's why that's showing up on the device. But if we wanted to pull in the Missoula County data set, then we could click on it, and it's going to send a request to the server, download that, and display it on the device. And that's the data set view. This is setting it up so you can show what data sets you want to show as part of it, and all that's managed through the page on My EDDMaps in terms of what counties show up here. The other feature here is the offline maps. The offline maps are where you can download that based data so you can have an idea of where you are if you don't have cellular coverage. The resolution is going to be a lot better always if you have cellular coverage. But this gives you an option of getting those offline maps there. So when you're here, and I'll go back to the Tift County example just to keep us from zooming across the country. But when you're here and you want to turn on the offline maps, you can click over here, and then that gives you that offline map view. Like I said, the resolution is not as high as what you were going to get if you're on the Google Maps view, but it gives you at least an idea of what's there without having to be online. And that can be as simple as turned off and on based on switching that. And as you can see, it's got the different sizes for what you're going to be downloading if you're downloading the offline maps. For Missoula and Lewis and Clark, both of those counties, we ended up splitting them into an east-west split just to reduce the size of the downloads a little bit so you don't get quite as large of a file. We found about 2 gigabytes is about as large as you'd want to download at one time. So look at this question. I got a question about how accurate can reporting get from a smartphone, along with that, does it work without cellular data signals? So yes, it does work without cellular data. The GPS is going to be faster if you have a cellular service, and as we saw with the offline maps, we built that feature in, but you are limited a little bit on the zoom level. If you see the blue here and how it's bouncing back and forth because I'm inside a building, then your accuracy is not as good as you're going to be outside. But we're regularly seeing, down to about 10-meter accuracy with the smartphones. And that is usually about what you can get. Sometimes if you're in an area with a lot of, tree cover, then it's not going to be as good. But sometimes if you wait and let it sit there for a few minutes, then that will improve your accuracy, and you are given that what your current accuracy is. So if I use my location here, then as you can see on this, my accuracy is only 32 meters, and that was shown by how it was jumping in and out. But usually if you're outside, that accuracy is a lot better. And then plus having those background maps there give you the option of moving the point so you can get a little bit better accuracy based on what you can see on the map. So yeah, good question. And if as other questions come in, I'll be glad to answer those as well. One of the things I have not mentioned yet is the revisit part. So let's take one of these that is a plant, and okay, so we're looking right here, and we go out and we say, okay, we're going to look at this Vinca major. We went back on it. It was originally reported in February, but we're going to do a revisit. So it's got the location. You could take a picture to show what the infestation looks like now. And then you can say, okay, well, I went back to do a treatment, and I'm going to change the status to treated. And then I can put, any more information into the notes field to go along with that. So here's, taking existing data, doing a follow-up, and then saving that. And then that report will also change to a gray color on the map. So when you're looking at a map and you're looking at your existing data, then you can see what you've done revisits on and what you haven't done revisits on. And with this, you're allowed to do a revisit on a report, even if you were not the original creator of that report. But it saves the original report. That data is not lost, but then you're able to go back and do a revisit on the report and show new information to go along with it. Let's go in and I will show you how to do a polygon. It is very, very similar to the way it is on the EDDMaps West app. You drop the corners, and then that draws in your polygon. When you're done, you go in. It's going to automatically calculate the area of that polygon for you, and save that into that field. And then you can go in and choose your species and continue with that report just like you would otherwise. When you're looking at the data, we have built in some filters, and that's over here on the right hand side. You can, if you're looking at the data and you have a lot of data with different statuses, then you can go in and say, okay, I don't want to see any of the positive reports. I only want to see the treated reports. And so you can go in and you can select on one of these statuses and remove those points, update the map, remove those points from the map. The other thing you can do is filter the map by the different categories of the state list. So if you only want to look at lists at species on the Montana 1A list, then you can choose that, and it will filter the map so you're only seeing those reports on the category one list. And I think I have to go off and refresh this before we'll change the map. But yeah, so where we had a bunch of points before, now we only have a handful of reports coming in here. And again, we've got some test data here around Tift County where you can see some data that is more of test data. We've got another question. So the question is from a master's student at Utah State who worked on Medusa head for his thesis project, and can your system report treatment information? Right now, in terms of EDDMaps and EDDMaps Pro, there is not a mechanism to record detailed treatment information. That is kind of by design. There is a way when you're doing the revisit, you have a notes field. You could put in that notes field, specific what you did in terms of the treatment. But we have erred on the side of, you have to turn in reports for pesticides for what you did that have to be filed. And so at this point, that detailed information about what the tank mix is and what the weather was and what adjuvants or dye was included with the herbicide. We're not building that into the main EDDMap system at this point. There is a couple of spinoffs that we're working with a group in Minnesota on, where they have are collecting that information through a kind of a private system, and we're seeing how that's going to work long term as a way to keep all that information, and then the information is tied to an EDDMaps record. But at this point, it's capturing the locations, getting that location either as a point or a polygon, and then doing the follow up to say, well, yes, it was treated, and then providing as much information about the treatment as you can, but without it really replacing the pesticide record at this point. So I'm trying to think what else. You do have a few settings here where you can refresh the species list, and that will make sure that you download the new information to the page. The save images to camera roll, that's something we've added to the app. So if you're taking pictures, those pictures can also be saved on your device. We had people that really wanted those pictures where they could easily get to them on their device and didn't want to have to take them twice. So that was something we added to this. So do revisits get verified, and how do they show up on the website? So good question. Right now, there is not a verification process for revisits. That's something that we're still trying to figure out the best way to make happen in terms of whether or not a verifier needs to see everything that goes through and gets verified on EDDMaps. I mean, that gets revisited on EDDMaps. And we're probably going to have a way for that to happen before this summer ends. A revisit tool has been something that has been limited in its use thus far, and that's part of the reason why we've not done a lot of worrying about the revisit part, because usually it's more of the advanced users who are using it. Let me see if I can pull up without jumping on a record that has a a revisit for it. How the revisits show up is when you go to a record that has a revisit, and these that have different colors and more likely are going to have revisits. So when you go to that individual record, down at the bottom, the revisits get added to the down below the record. So as you can see on this one, there was in August of 2016, Jerry Caldwell, who was the original reporter in 2015, didn't find it. Then, in February 2017, they found it and it was treated. It showed up again in July of 2017. And then in August again, it was not found. So you've got this history of what's happened by the different user. And if somebody went in and changed the status on a record that didn't need to be changed, then, we have a track of that so we can undo it without putting unnecessary work on the verifiers. So one issue I found with this program is when I'm entering map, you can't enter more than one plant species. Is there an option to enter more than one plant species per entry going to be available when treatment occurs and there's multiple plant species being treated oftentimes? Yes, that is something that we have talked about. We haven't completely implemented it because of the fact that the way EDDMaps is set up, each record is an individual species. And so if you are doing a polygon and you're doing multiple species within that polygon, then going down to the detail of, which polygon was which species and some of that information gets a little bit tricky. Do you need to put multiple densities for each species? If you're treating two different ones and one of them was 50% dense and the other one was only 5% of the infestation, by the time you split that up within one record that you choose multiple species for, it may be just as easy to create two different records. That's really what we've tried to do with EDDMaps Pro, is to make it as streamlined as possible to report something. So if you're out reporting a lot of data, then you don't have to kind of wade through the field guide and all the other information, different categories that's on the EDDMaps West app. But it's definitely something that's on the radar. It's just figuring out the exact implementation for it. It's something, doing these webinars and getting feedback from our users is something that we're still trying to gather. So I guess I'll ask the question back. If you are treating an area with multiple species, let's say even 3 species, are you keeping up with the density for each of those species, or is it just here's the polygon and here are the different species? Yes. So the question was, can you switch the map from satellite? Yes. Let me switch back to the to here. The settings of the gears over here on the right hand side, you can click and very quickly switch between the normal view, the satellite view, or the terrain view, kind of the built-in views in Google Maps. So that can be done at any point without having to even change your zoom level. We tried to make that as quick as possible. Yeah. So one question, and yes, this is something that we need to add. We've added it to the website, but we have not added it to the EDDMaps Pro app. But it's a good point, and we'll get it added. Is if you're when you go to do a report on EDDMaps now on the website, I'll switch over and show this, and this needs to be added to the app. You have this option right here of positive, negative, or treated initially, and that needs to be built into EDDMaps Pro as well. So if you're going out there and the initial work you're doing a treatment, then you can quickly switch that to treated right there in the app, and when it goes in as a treated point. So great point, and we will get that added to the next update. And we've got a few other little things we're going to be adding to it, to both the iPhone and the Android version. And the Android version is very similar to the iPhone version, as opposed to switching back and forth between devices. I decided it was easier just to stick with the iPhone today. But yes, that on this report form, having having an option here for the status where that could be set, when you first make the report, is definitely needed. And if there's other fields that that you feel are important to add here, then please email me. Please let me know. That is something that we are always, we really want this EDDMaps Pro platform to be something that is as useful as possible for the professional users that really want to report a lot of data, and adding multiple species, and adding the option to go ahead and mark something as treated when it first comes in, are two things that are definitely been on our radar. The marking as treated is obviously a very easy thing to add, and so we'll get that added to the next update that we do with the app. So other questions or comments, either about the app or about the website. One of the things that we're going to have as an option as we move forward with this is the ability to, on the website, have a way where you can upload a KML file and then overlay that KML file onto the map, so you can see. So one of your options would be my counties, my species, my boundaries or shape files or whatever, KML files, whatever the appropriate wording for that is. But where if you've got a certain boundary that you want to show up, if it's a property you're working on or whatever, and you want to be able to show that all up, then you can easily turn that on and download that to your device, just like you can download the data sets. Right now, the data sets are limited to the county level with no really filtering on that, other than so if there are biocontrol releases, you would get those as part of that download. But as this moves forward and we get more feedback from users, we're going to make it where you can kind of set up your own query, that if you're only looking at Canada thistle and that's all you're interested in this county, then you could just download Canada thistle. And also having more options over here for searching for an individual report. So if you know the observation ID, then you could choose it and jump straight to that point without having to kind of find it on the map. But and ultimately, we see that the EDDMaps Pro platform will be a tool that verifiers can use. So you'll be able to view, so a verifier would be able to view unverified data through EDDMaps Pro, and they would be able to go in and see the points that way and verify them, especially if they were in the field. And so that's another coming feature that will be added soon. We're just trying to make sure the core functionality is there as we move this forward. So, other questions or comments? So if we have a separate reporting system that tracks legally required herbicide treatment information, can our system be linked to EDDMaps to show that information? I think the answer is yes. I may say that it depends on whether or not you want all that information to be public. That's probably the question I would have for you. But yes, you could send us the information, and we could take the location information and the species information, and then the kind of the status of treated out of that information and make that public through EDDMaps. And that can be done a couple of different ways depending on what the reporting system that's currently being used. But we've worked with different systems and different databases to do that. So yeah, Jasmine. So EDDMaps Pro was introduced. I mean, one of the things that we really wanted EDDMaps Pro to be able to do is be able to pre-certify fire camp areas, and that is where that could be done by knowing where the area was and downloading the data, and then looking at the data within the app of where the fire camp was going to be. So you download the county and then kind of zoom into the area, and you could see what was around there. That's also where the MyKML upload will be helpful in that, where you can choose a KML file, upload it into the app, and then see the exact boundary of that fire camp. So that's part of why that feature is still coming, and something that you can do now, but it would be easier if you could see the exact boundary of where the proposed fire camp was when you zoom in, and that's how you could do that with the KML upload part. So, a question from somebody with BLM. Mentioned that coordinate with BLM to integrate their requirements in the program. So what we're really trying to do, I guess, probably not coordinating with integrating the requirements for BLM into the program, but we're looking at ways to integrate the BLM data, this existing data that is now available through the USGS Bison database, into EDDMaps. So if there's existing populations within the BLM system, then that would be available through EDDMaps. So when you download that county data set, you would be able to see where that data existed, the BLM data existed. And that's also why we're working on the National Forest system as well. My understanding is that NISMS is what BLM is using and is going to be using. And so I think it will be more of getting data from NISMS into EDDMaps. We will be happy to provide data back to BLM from EDDMaps, and there's some tools built into EDDMaps to do that, but I'm not sure that that's the direction that things are necessarily moving right now. So I'll be glad to answer any other questions. And if you have a microphone available, or if you're on the phone and you have a question, then there's a way you can raise your hand, and I can unmute you as well, and we can instead of you having to type something in, feel free to go that route as well. We've got about 40 people on, so I think that's enough that if you have the microphone available, we could go that route. Trying to think what other is anything else with the main app that we haven't covered. We have, one of the things that with the data set that should be part of the workflow is if you're making a lot of changes and you're going out and you're doing revisits and you're adding new data, then, after you upload everything from your queue, so, at the end of the day, when you're somewhere where you have cellular coverage, then, you want to select everything, you want to upload your queue to EDDMaps, and then, and I'm just going to delete these, and then, re-download that data set onto your device, and that will be something that's an automatic thing when you do the refresh within the device. So is there a subscription fee? No. Everything that I've showed y'all today is all freely available. To be used. The app is a free download, and everything. Everything that we've shown on the web and within the app is all freely available. Well, thank y'all very much. If you have any additional questions, then feel free to email me. I will pop my my email address back up. I can switch back over to so cbargero@uga.edu is my email address. Feel free to contact me with any additional questions or comments. I did record this webinar, and it will be posted on YouTube and be made available for you to come back to in the future. And then we're doing this again next Monday at noon Eastern, 10 Mountain Time, and I'm going to cover basically exactly what we covered today. So maybe a different question or two. If you have additional questions, then you're free to join us then as well. But thank you all for your time, and hope you have a good day.